The number gets repeated so often in trading circles that it has started to feel like background noise. 97% of retail traders lose money. Some studies put it at 90%. Some put it closer to 80%. The exact figure varies depending on the market, the time frame, and the methodology of whoever is measuring. But the direction is always the same. The overwhelming majority of people who sit down at a screen, open a brokerage account, and begin trading their own money end up with less than they started with. This is not a warning designed to keep you out of the markets. The markets are not going anywhere, and neither is the human impulse to participate in them. This is an attempt to explain why the failure rate is what it is, not in the vague motivational language of discipline and mindset that fills most trading content, but in the structural, psychological, and institutional terms that actually account for it. Because the reasons most retail traders lose are not primarily about effort. They are not primarily about intelligence. And they are not, despite what most trading educators will tell you, primarily about strategy. The reasons are deeper than that. And understanding them changes how you think about what it actually takes to be on the right side of that statistic. The first reason is structural. The retail trader is not competing in a fair market. They are competing in a market that is populated by professional participants with resources, technology, information infrastructure, and institutional advantages that the retail trader cannot match, and in most cases cannot even see. A hedge fund running a quantitative strategy has teams of mathematicians building models that process more data in a second than a retail trader reviews in a month. A high-frequency trading firm has servers located physically inside the exchange, a practice called co-location that allows their orders to execute in microseconds, giving them a speed advantage that is not a matter of skill but of proximity. A market maker has visibility into the order flow that shapes price movement before that movement is visible on any retail chart. None of these participants are doing anything illegal. They are operating within the rules of the market. But those rules were not written with the retail trader in mind. They were written in an environment shaped heavily by the same institutions that benefit from them. The retail trader who opens a chart and begins making decisions based on candlestick patterns and support levels is bringing a paper map to a GPS war. The map is not useless, but it is not a fair contest. The second reason is the asymmetry of information. Markets move on information. The price of an asset reflects the collective interpretation of available information by all participants at any given moment. The question is not whether information is available, but who gets it first, who interprets it most accurately, and who has the capital to act on it at the scale that matters. Institutional investors have access to alternative data sources that retail traders do not. Satellite imagery of retail car parks that predicts quarterly earnings before they are announced. Credit card transaction data aggregated across millions of consumers that reveals revenue trends in real time. Private conversations with company management through channels that are technically legal but practically inaccessible to anyone without institutional credentials. The retail trader is making decisions based on public information that has already been processed, priced, and acted on by participants who received it earlier, understood it more deeply, and deployed more capital against it than the retail trader can. By the time a piece of information reaches the retail trading community, its most valuable implications have already been extracted by the market's professional layer. The third reason is psychological, and it is perhaps the most consistently underestimated of the structural factors. Human beings did not evolve to trade financial markets. The cognitive architecture that served our ancestors well in the environments they navigated is systematically mismatched with the demands of trading. Loss aversion, the tendency to feel losses approximately twice as acutely as equivalent gains, produces one of the most reliably destructive patterns in retail trading. A trader who is up on a position closes it quickly to lock in the gain. The same trader who is down on a position holds it, waiting for a recovery that may never come, because closing the position means accepting the loss as real. The result is a portfolio of small wins and large losses, the exact opposite of what profitable trading requires. Overconfidence bias produces a different but equally destructive pattern. Research on trading performance consistently shows that retail traders significantly overestimate the skill component of their early results. A trader who makes money in their first 3 months almost always attributes it to skill. In most cases, it is luck operating in a favorable market environment. When the environment changes, the strategy that appeared to work stops working. And the trader who believed in their own skill rather than their luck is now making larger bets with misplaced confidence at exactly the wrong moment. Recency bias causes traders to extrapolate recent market behavior into the future. A market that has been trending upward for 6 months feels like a market that will continue trending upward. A market that has just crashed feels like a market that will continue crashing. Both impulses are wrong often enough to be expensive, and both are expressions of the same cognitive tendency to weight recent experience more heavily than the full historical record. The fourth reason is the cost structure of trading. This one is rarely discussed with the honesty it deserves. Every trade has a cost. The spread between the bid and ask price is a cost. The commission charged by the broker is a cost. The overnight financing charge on leveraged positions is a cost. The slippage between the price at which an order is placed and the price at which it is executed is a cost. These costs are individually small but collectively enormous. A retail trader making 10 trades a week, each with a combined cost of a few dollars in spread, commission, and slippage, is paying several $100s a year in trading costs before a single directional bet has been made. For a small account of $5,000, this represents a meaningful annual headwind that must be overcome before the account shows any profit at all. Leverage amplifies this problem catastrophically. A retail trader using 10-to-1 leverage on a $5,000 account is controlling $50,000 of market exposure. The costs associated with that exposure, financing charges, spread, slippage, are calculated on the full $50,000 position, not on the $5,000 the trader actually has. The trader is paying institutional scale costs on retail scale capital. It is structurally almost impossible to overcome. The fifth reason is the predatory design of the retail trading industry itself. This is the reason that is most rarely discussed because it implicates the infrastructure that most retail traders rely on to participate in the markets at all. Many retail brokers make their money not from commissions, but from what is called payment for order flow, a practice in which the broker routes the retail trader's orders to a market maker who pays for the privilege of being on the other side of that order. The market maker profits from the spread and from information about aggregate retail order flow. The broker profits from the payment. The retail trader has no idea this is happening and has no visibility into how it affects their execution quality. The trading education industry is structured around the same conflict of interest. The people selling trading courses, signal services, and proprietary indicators have a financial incentive in the continued belief that trading success is learnable from a course, purchasable as a system, or achievable by following someone else's signals. The evidence for any of these claims is almost universally absent from the marketing materials that make them. The people making serious money from retail trading infrastructure are almost always the brokers, the educators, and the technology providers, not the traders. The sixth reason is the entry conditions of the retail trader. Most people who begin trading do so with insufficient capital, insufficient experience, and under psychological conditions that are almost perfectly calibrated to produce poor decisions. Insufficient capital means that the trader cannot absorb the normal drawdown periods that even excellent strategies experience. A strategy with a genuine long-term edge will still produce losing months, sometimes losing quarters. A trader with a small account who experiences 3 consecutive losing months may lose enough of their capital that the account no longer functions. Not because the strategy has failed, but because the account was too small to survive long enough for the strategy's edge to manifest. Insufficient experience means that the trader cannot distinguish between a strategy that is failing and a strategy that is in a normal drawdown period. Both look the same from inside a losing month. The experienced trader knows the difference. The beginner abandons the strategy, searches for a new one, and begins the cycle again, paying trading costs and making emotionally driven decisions throughout the search. The psychological conditions under which most people enter trading are also significant. Many retail traders begin trading because they need money. They have seen a social media post, a YouTube video, or an advertisement suggesting that trading provides financial freedom, passive income, or escape from an unsatisfying employment situation. The emotional need for trading to work creates a decision-making environment that is almost perfectly hostile to the clear, patient, probabilistic thinking that profitable trading requires. A person who needs their next trade to make rent cannot think like a trader. They can only think like someone who needs their next trade to make rent. The seventh reason is perhaps the hardest one to accept. Most retail traders are not, on a risk-adjusted basis, doing something meaningfully different from gambling. They are making directional bets on short-term price movements in markets where the price movements in any given day, hour, or minute are, for most practical purposes, random. The research on short-term price predictability is not encouraging for the retail trader. Academic studies consistently show that short-term price movements in liquid markets are extremely difficult to predict with any reliability above chance. The patterns that appear on a 5-minute chart, the candlestick formations that retail educators teach as predictive signals, the support and resistance levels that retail traders draw on their screens, all of these have statistical properties that are much closer to noise than to signal in the short term. This does not mean that no edge exists in markets. It means that the edges that do exist are difficult to find, difficult to sustain, and are typically captured by participants with significant advantages in data, technology, and institutional infrastructure. The retail trader working from a laptop with a charting package and a few $1,000s is not competing for the same edges. They are competing for whatever is left after the professional layer has taken what it can take, which, as the 97% figure suggests, is most of what is there. None of this means that retail participation in markets is pointless. Long-term index investing, buying and holding a diversified portfolio of assets through a low-cost index fund over a period of decades, is not subject to most of these failure conditions. The cost structure is minimal. The information asymmetry is irrelevant because the strategy does not require superior information. The psychological demands are manageable because the required behavior is inaction rather than constant decision-making. The structural disadvantage is absent because the retail investor is not competing with institutions for short-term directional edges. They are simply participating in the long-term growth of productive economic activity. The 97% failure rate is a failure rate for active retail trading. It is not a comment on the value of market participation broadly. The distinction matters enormously for anyone trying to build long-term financial security. Understanding why the majority lose is not an argument for paralysis. It is the foundation for making better decisions about how to participate, which edges are genuinely available to a retail participant, which costs can be controlled, which psychological tendencies need to be managed, and which forms of market participation offer a realistic path to the financial outcomes most people are actually trying to achieve. The market is not rigged in the conspiratorial sense. It is simply structured in ways that heavily favor certain participants over others. Knowing which participant you are and making decisions accordingly is where the real edge begins. Check out our previous Kraftwise video on what happens to your index fund when the market crashes. Because once you understand why active trading fails for most people, understanding how to hold through volatility in a long-term portfolio becomes the most important financial skill you can build.